bless Cpac. So Donald Trump is skipping Cpac. I think somebody told him Megyn Kelly was going to be here. Or even worse, he was told there were conservatives that were going to be here. Or even worse, he was told there were libertarians who were going to be here. Or even worse, they were told there were young people who were going to be here. Now, none of y'all have a degree from Trump University. Listen. Listen. The men and women here are a grassroots army. The men and women here love liberty. And let me tell you, as dire as things are, people are waking up all over this country. And help is on the way. This election is going to be about three things: jobs, liberty, and security. Let's start with jobs. You know, it's easy to talk about making America great again. You can even print that on a baseball cap. But the question is, do you understand the principles that made America great in the first place? The heart of the economy is not Washington, D.C. It's not New York City. The heart of the economy are small businesses all over this country. You want to crush the economy, hammer small businesses like we've done the last 7 years. And you want to unchain the economy, lift the boot of the federal government off the backs of the necks of small businesses. If I am elected president, we will repeal every word of Obamacare. We'll pass common sense health care reform that makes health insurance personal and portable and affordable and keeps government from getting in between us and our doctors. And we will pass a simple flat tax, where every American can fill out our taxes on a postcard. And when we do that, we should abolish the IRS. Now, I understand that a lot of people in this country are angry. I get being angry. I'm angry too. For far too long, politicians in both parties have lied to us. They make promises on the trail, and then they go to Washington, and they don't do what they said. And you know, no issue captures that better than immigration. Listen, immigration is a law enforcement matter. Immigration is a national security matter. But at its heart, immigration is an economic matter. When you allow 12 million people to come to this country illegally, you take away millions of jobs from U.S. citizens, from legal immigrants, and you drive down wages for everybody. Now, in a Republican primary, everyone says they oppose illegal immigration. The question to ask was in 2013, when the battle over the Gang of Eight amnesty bill was being waged, where did you stand? Did you stand as far too many establishment Republicans did with Barack Obama and the Democrats pushing amnesty on millions of Americans? Or did you stand, as I was proud to stand, with millions of Americans saying, no, we will not have amnesty? And you know, I'm told that Donald Trump talks a fair amount about immigration. There's a natural question to ask. During the Gang of Eight battle, where was Donald? Well, sadly, worse than nowhere. Donald was funding the Gang of Eight. He gave over $50,000 to 5 of the 8 members of the Gang of Eight. And last night, Donald on stage promised all of us to be flexible. He said that over and over again, how flexible he was. Well, let me tell you, everyone at Cpac, flexible is code word in Washington, D.C. for they're getting ready to stick it to you. Have you noticed every time they're flexible in Washington, it benefits the giant corporations, it benefits Wall Street, it benefits the special interests, and the working men and women of this country get left in the cold. Here's what we're going to do. If I'm elected, we're repealing Obamacare, we're passing a flat tax, we're abolishing the IRS, we're pulling back the federal regulators, we're stopping amnesty, we're securing the borders. And here's what's going to happen. Millions and millions of high-paying jobs, wages coming up for everyone, young people coming out of school getting 2, 3, 4, 5 job offers. Morning in America. The second critical issue in this election is freedom. You know, for all of us, Justice Scalia's passing just 2 weeks ago underscored the stakes of this election. I was blessed to know Justice Scalia personally for 20 years. I started my career as a law clerk at the court and litigated in front of the court, arguing cases in front of the court for over a decade. Justice Scalia was a lion of the law, and he ferociously protected the Bill of Rights for all of us. His passing underscores that this election is not about one branch of government, it's about 2. We are one liberal justice away from the Supreme Court ruling that government can take our religious liberty away and force every one of us to violate our faith on penalty of prison or fine. We are one liberal justice away from the Supreme Court ordering 10 Commandments monuments torn down all over this country. We are one liberal justice away from the Supreme Court erasing the Second Amendment from the Bill of Rights. We are one liberal justice away from the Supreme Court ordering veterans memorials torn down, if they have any religious symbols, torn down all over this country. And we are one liberal justice away from the Supreme Court making us subject to the World Court and the United Nations and international law and giving away U.S. sovereignty. Now, you know, in the debate last week, there was a moment of clarity on this issue. Hugh Hewitt asked a question about religious liberty in the Supreme Court. And Donald Trump turned to me and said, "Ted, I've known a lot more politicians in my life than you have." Now, in that, he is surely correct. He has been supporting liberal Democratic politicians for 4 decades. But he said, "Ted, when it comes to the Supreme Court, you got to be prepared to compromise. You got to be willing to cut a deal with the Democrats." Let me be very clear to every man and woman here at Cpac. I will not compromise away your religious liberty. And I will not compromise away your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Because if any president does what Donald is promising to do, cut a deal with Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer to agree on Justice Scalia's replacement, then we know that replacement will be a left-wing judicial activist who will strip away our rights. And I give you my solemn commitment that every justice I put on the Supreme Court will be a principled constitutionalist, faithful to the law, who will vigorously protect the Bill of Rights for each and every one of us. The third key issue this election is about is security. For 7 years, America has abandoned our friends and allies and has shown weakness and appeasement to our enemies. The world is much more dangerous because of it. Once again, in the debate last week, there was a moment of clarity in this choice. Donald Trump told us he will be neutral between Israel and the Palestinians. Now, let me be very clear. As president, I have no intention of being neutral. America will stand unapologetically with the nation of Israel. And if you cannot tell the difference between terrorists who walk into shopping malls with dynamite strapped around their chest to blow up women and children and the soldiers protecting innocents, if you buy into the media and the left wing's narrative of moral equivalency, then that draws into question the judgment any individual would have as commander-in-chief. Over the last 7 years, we've seen the United States military weakened. We've seen our readiness degraded. We've seen morale plummet. Now, America's seen this happen before. We've seen a left-wing Democratic president weaken the military as Jimmy Carter did, and in 1981, Ronald Reagan came into the White House. Now, what did Reagan do? He cut taxes, he passed regulatory reform, the economy took off, millions of small businesses grew, trillions of dollars of government revenue. He used that revenue to rebuild the military, and we bankrupted the Soviet Union and won the Cold War. I intend to do the exact same thing with radical Islamic terrorism. We are going to unleash incredible economic growth and rebuild the military so it remains the world's mightiest fighting force. No longer will the military be governed by political correctness. No longer will it be a top priority of the Pentagon to provide gluten-free MREs. Instead, we will have a commander-in-chief who says to the world, we will defeat radical Islamic terrorism. We'll have a president willing to utter the words, radical Islamic terrorism. And one of the most disgraceful things we've seen over the last 7 years is sending our fighting men and women into combat with rules of engagement that tie their arms behind their back and make it impossible for them to win, to defeat the enemy, and to protect themselves. That is wrong, it is immoral, and in January 2017, it will end. America has always been reluctant to use military force. We are slow to anger. But if and when military force is required, we should use overwhelming force, kill the enemy, and then get the heck out. And it is the men and women gathered here, the men and women of Cpac, it is the young people, it is the lovers of liberty, it is the lovers of the Constitution that will lead that fight. It took Jimmy Carter to give us Ronald Reagan. And I am convinced the most long-lasting legacy of Barack Obama is going to be a new generation of leaders in the Republican Party who stand and fight for liberty, who stand and fight for the Constitution, and who stand and fight for the Judeo-Christian values that built this great nation. Thank you, and God bless you.
Wow, what a round.
By the way, did y'all know that Hannity, they always film Fox from the waist up, so he's always in jeans.
I'm in jeans all over. Yo, what? Look at this place. It's as packed as it's been since we've been here. How y'all doing, Cpac? For me to get this bigger crowd, I had to bring 1,000 footballs last night. Did you all enjoy the debate with Senator Cruz last night? Did? Senator, it's good to see you.
It's great to be here.
I know you got a lot of sleep last night, maybe an hour, 2 hours.
Not much.
Not much. I want to talk about process and where we are with the campaign.
Yeah.
You are second in the delegate count. It's not that big a disparity.
Nope.
You have a path to the nomination. Right? I want to, there is now, Mitt Romney gave his speech yesterday. What did you think of it?
Oh, listen, I think Mitt is a citizen. He's entitled to express his views. I think he's concerned about what Donald Trump would mean. Listen, I come from a different place than Mitt does, but I'll tell you the concern Mitt's expressing is a concern people have all over this country. You know, if you look at Republicans across the country, 65 to 70% of Republicans recognize that Donald Trump is not the best candidate to go head-to-head with Hillary Clinton. That if Donald is our nominee, in all likelihood, Hillary wins, we lose the Supreme Court for a generation, the Bill of Rights is lost, and we're buried in debt, and jihadists continue to rise across the globe. Never Trump! Well, and I will say, if you're one of those 65 to 70% of Republicans that recognize Donald is not the best candidate to win, then what is critical is that we come together. And I think Super Tuesday this week was a clarifying moment in this election, because Super Tuesday made clear that only one campaign has repeatedly beaten Donald Trump, and only one campaign can and will beat Donald Trump.
Here's what I want to ask. I want the crowd to answer with me. Do you not see that of the 14 or 15 contests that have happened, and I think this is true, that the establishment has lost 14 or 15?
Yep.
Did you see that? Now, the only question I have is, there seems to be an organized, well-funded effort to push this to the convention in the hopes, maybe I'm reading into it, to prevent you or Mr. Trump from getting the nomination because the establishment is angry that you're winning. Is that true?
Look, Sean, you are exactly right. Anytime you hear someone talking about a brokered convention, it is the Washington establishment in a fevered frenzy They're really frustrated because all of their chosen candidates, all of the golden children, the voters keep rejecting. And so they've seized on this master plan. We go to a brokered convention and the D.C. power brokers will drop someone in who is exactly to the liking of the Washington establishment. If that would happen, we will have a manifest revolt on our hands all across this country. And so if you want to beat Donald Trump, here's how you do it. You beat Donald Trump with the voters. And the key to that, Sean, listen, we started off with 17 candidates, which means there are a lot of folks in this room that started off supporting other people. There were a lot of good people in this race. I understand that. I respect that. But the field is narrowed, and it's narrowed, and it's narrowed. We've now had 15 races. Our campaign has beaten Donald in 5 states. We beat him resoundingly in Iowa. We beat him resoundingly in Texas. We beat him in Oklahoma. We beat him in Alaska, and we beat him in Minnesota.
I think that plan is real. I think the establishment is paying all this money to do it. But I want to move on to some other topics because I think the voters have something to say about that. One thing they haven't factored in is they can't buy your votes. They can't decide for you, and you will have the power to pick the people that you want to be the next leader of this country. And thank God it's going to be you and not them, or else we'd have another, well, Bob Dole or John McCain.
Look, Sean, that is exactly right. And let me make an explicit pitch to folks here. If you started off with another candidate, you know, maybe you were originally with Rand Paul. Maybe you were with Jeb Bush or Chris Christie, or maybe you were with Mike Huckabee or Rick Santorum, or maybe you've been with Marco Rubio or with John Kasich. Or maybe you were with Carly Fiorina. All of them are good, honorable people. I respect every one of them and anyone. And maybe you were with Dr. Ben Carson. Every one of them are good, honorable people. Every one of them is 1,000 times better than Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders.
Here's a question. Would you put those people in your cabinet if you get elected president?
Absolutely. Just every name I listed would be a natural to serve in a cabinet and as part of the leadership if we win this race. And let me speak to the supporters of each of those candidates. Those are good and honorable people, but I don't believe they have a path to beat Donald Trump. And if you don't want Donald to be our nominee, then I ask you, come join us. We welcome you on our team. We are building a broad and welcoming coalition of lovers of liberty who believe in the Constitution.
I want to get to your legal background. You were the former Attorney General of the great state of Texas. I can see he's got his boots on, so he's proven his worth here. Hillary Clinton has now had somebody that pled the Fifth that is now turning state's evidence. The person that built the server in the mom and pop shop that Hillary should not have been using. From your legal expertise, do you believe a grand jury has been convened, as Joe DeGeneva believes and Victoria Tunsing believes? Do you think she violated the law, and do you think in the end she will be the candidate?
Listen, I think it is an ominous development for Hillary Clinton. You know, how many of y'all have watched mob movies? How many of you watch things like Goodfellas? Listen, when Paulie flips and goes to the feds, it ain't good for Fat Tony. And they're granting him, I'm going to get in so much trouble.
This is so funny.
You know, Sean, you have a bad effect on me.
Yeah, I know. I notice I get blamed for all of this.
But listen, it is the fact that immunity has been granted to the person who sets up the server means that he can't plead the Fifth anymore, that he's got to spill the beans. And I guarantee you they're asking, what did Secretary Clinton know and when did she know it? What did her inner team know and when did they know it? And I will say this in the general election. We've never had a general election debate convened at Leavenworth. But this year might be the first.
I hope she likes orange pantsuits. I can say it. I'm a talk show host. I can get away with anything I want.
Well, Sean, orange is the new Democratic blue.
Isn't this fun at Cpac?
Absolutely.
This is great. Here's a question. All right, I'm going to give everybody in this room the Democratic playbook, and I want you to tell this audience how you're going to deal with this. Republicans are racist, sexist, homophobic. They want to poison the air and water. They want to kill children. And every grandmother in the country in a wheelchair, Paul Ryan and Ted Cruz, wants to throw over a cliff. How do you deal with the predictable lies that are coming?
Well, you know, there is this psychological term Freud talked about called projection. Let's go through each of those. Racist. The Democratic Party is unwilling to say the words, all lives matter. When did it become controversial to say every human being is a precious gift from God and we value everybody? And by the way, you want to talk about Black Lives Mattering. You know, in 1990, there were 2,200 homicides in New York City. Last year, there were 300. That is over 2,000 a year, roughly 2,000 a year. Murders that were prevented by the brave men and women of the NYPD. You want to talk about thousands of black lives that have been saved because of the bravery of our police officers. And all lives matter, but let me tell you, blue lives matter. And we stand with the men and women who protect us.
So I take from your answer, you go and fight, and you make the case.
You take the case right to them. Listen, I got to tell you, I cannot wait to stand on that general election debate stage with Hillary Clinton. She will inevitably stand up and, like Barack Obama, prattle on about income inequality. And I'll be ready to say, Secretary Clinton, I'm very glad you raised that, because it's increased dramatically under your policies. You know, Sean, I'll actually say a sentence that I suspect has never before been said at Cpac.
Oh, boy.
I'm not Donald Trump, so it won't be X-rated. I agree with Bernie Sanders. Listen, Bernie Sanders talks all the time about
the liberal media is back there. That's going to be the quote of the day. Go ahead.
Bernie Sanders talks all the time about the corruption in Washington, how career politicians in both parties get in bed with the giant corporations, with the lobbyists and special interests, and how the game is rigged. Bernie's right. When he's defining the problem, he is exactly right that Washington is fundamentally corrupt. Here's where I disagree with Bernie. If the problem is government's corrupt, then the answer ain't, let's have a whole bunch more government.
You know, Senator, one of the reasons I love coming back to Cpac every year, and you referenced it earlier, is that there are so many young people here. They are our future. I know, and I'm not trying to be repetitive, I've asked you this question before, but I want to go through it because this is how profound and deep the problems are right now. You know, you got kids, they graduate school, they got to go home and live with mom and dad.
Yep.
94.5 million of our fellow citizens are out of the labor force, millions more than when Barack Obama became president. 50 million Americans in poverty, millions more than when Obama became president. 46 million Americans are on food stamps. We now have doubled the national debt. We have 120 trillion in unfunded liability. The last 7 years, median income has gone down. And my question is, for all these young people that want a home and a job and a career and a future and a ladder up, how fast can you help them if you become president?
We can turn things around overnight. Listen, young people are told this is as good as it gets. Accept stagnation, accept misery, accept coming out of school drowning in student loans with no hope of a good job. Malaise. We've heard that before. Democrats say that. Jimmy Carter told us this is as good as it gets, and history teaches that is an utter lie. Let me tell you how, as conservatives, we get young people. There's both substance and style. On substance, if you sat down and tried to design an agenda to hammer the living daylights out of young people, it would be hard to come up with a more effective agenda than the Obama economic agenda. For 7 years, young people come out of school with stagnation and can't find jobs. Obamacare is a massive wealth transfer from young, healthy people to everybody else. And $18 trillion in national debt. Who the heck do you think is going to pay for that? We got to go and make the case. Look, it is like, for young people, your parents went to Vegas, took out a credit card in your name, partied it up, and stuck you with a bill. We got to speak the truth that this economic agenda is hammering young people, but some of it is style. I mean, listen, if Republicans are a bunch of old fuddy-duddies with sticks,
Yeah. I thought we were going back to last night's debate about body parts. All right, go ahead.
You know, would it kill Republicans?
I'm kidding.
Would it kill Republicans to crack a joke?
I make fun of Bill Clinton all the time. There's a lot of hot chicks over there on that side of you.
You know, you got to have some fun with it. You got to laugh. You know, we put out a meme. Reaganomics. You start a business in your parents' garage. Obamanomics. You move into your parents' garage. And you know, Sean, I'll give another example. A couple of years ago, I was out traveling to California. And the week before I arrived in California, these posters began appearing all over town. They were posters of my head on a shirtless body. It was ripped, covered in tattoos, a giant eagle on my chest, 2 6-shooters on my abs, which were a perfect 8-pack, Winston Churchill on my right bicep, which was massive, a cigarette dangling out of my mouth, and above it the legend, blacklisted and loving it. Now, Sean, we had nothing to do with this. This was a local street artist that put them up on his own, but we decided to have fun with it, so we put up a Facebook post. And we said, for whatever reason, these posters have begun appearing all over Hollywood. I have to say I noticed a glaring error. I don't smoke cigarettes. And people laughed, they had fun, they shared them. And I'll tell you an interesting thing the media hadn't reported. We've had 15 states so far. Many of them didn't have exit polls, but of the one that did have exit polls, our campaign won young people in the state of Iowa. We won young people in the state of South Carolina. We won young people in the state of Oklahoma. We won young people in the state of Arkansas. And we won young people in the great state of Texas.
My last question, and I'll play off your little humor bit. There might be something that you and Donald Trump can put together. We have evil in our...
I'm terrified.
It might work out. You might like this. Because ISIS is evil in our time. You agree? I think everybody in this audience understands the evil that we face. And for this generation coming up, we have got to stop this evil in its tracks. You have stated that you think we should carpet bomb the Islamic State, which, by the way, is Islamic, President Obama. And he has said we should bomb the living out of them. I'm thinking maybe we should carpet bomb the living out of them, and I think it's the perfect plan. Is that okay? You get along with Trump on that?
Listen.
All right, it was funnier than when I did it backstage, okay?
ISIS, every militant on the face of the planet, if they go and join ISIS, if they wage jihad against the United States of America, they are going to understand that they are signing their death warrant. And you know, it's interesting. A lot of people in the media characterize strength against our enemies as somehow being a warmonger. I think it's exactly the opposite. I believe, like Ronald Reagan, in peace through strength. I actually think the weakness of Barack Obama invites military conflict. It encourages our enemy. And let me point out that the nation of Iran in 1981 released our hostages the day Ronald Reagan was sworn into office. That's the difference a strong commander-in-chief can make, because the Ayatollah Khomeini realized this Reagan wasn't Jimmy Carter. He wasn't wringing his hands in fear. He wasn't bluffing. Well, let me tell you, Sean, I don't bluff either. And when your enemies understand that, more often than not, you don't need to use military power. You know, the biggest country Ronald Reagan invaded in 8 years was Grenada. That's what happens when America is strong and your enemies understand it. And we can have that again. That is who we are. And I want to finally say to everyone here, I ask you to stand with us. This is a grassroots army. Washington, D.C., the establishment, is terrified of everyone gathered here. But if we come together right now, if we unite, we will win this primary. We will defeat Hillary Clinton in November. And we will turn this country around. And I have spent my entire life fighting to defend the Constitution and Bill of Rights. And I give you my solemn promise that when I take that oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, that I will faithfully execute that oath every single day in office.
Cpac, give it up for Senator Ted Cruz.